You are listening to LOA Recon with the Good Vibe coach Jeanette Ma, where we dissect the ins and outs and the art and science of conscious creation, all intended to amp up your manifesting game. Let's have some fun together. Thanks for tuning in today, where I wanted to talk about 3 tips you never hear that will totally supercharge your manifesting. But before we started, I wondered whether I needed to wake up my dog and move my cat, because I got a snoring dog behind me and a purring cat on my lap. And I thought, oh, you guys might be able to hear that. But I decided instead of having it be distracting, we'll just intend it's extra good vibes for the recording. So that's what I wanted to do, is bring extra good vibes to your manifesting, as a matter of fact. We hear lots of common tips for getting better results with law of attraction, like becoming a better appreciator, getting more clear about your desire, not taking score too soon, letting go of the hows, all of which are really, really good tips. And we'd be wise to apply them. They could really make a good difference. But I wanted to talk about the tips we never hear that can make a big difference in our results in our conscious creation. So the first one I wanted to share was the power of the hissy fit, or giving yourself the gift of a good tantrum or a good cry. You know, conscious creators are well trained that we get what we vibrate. And for that reason, we're strongly conditioned to want to think good thoughts and feel good feelings. And sometimes that means that we end up shortchanging the full range of our emotional experience, because when we notice ourselves getting angry or sad, we automatically try to redirect our thoughts so that we're not putting anything out there that we don't want to come back. But the truth is that routine does not work very well, because we also know that what we resist persists. And it is completely natural. In fact, it would be very unnatural if we didn't have the full range of human emotions. So rather than trying to avoid those or dismissing them or downplaying them, and I don't want to call them negative because that feels kind of judgmental, but the sorts of feelings that fall on the lower half of Abraham's scale, things like anger or revenge or discouragement or sadness, guilt, a lot of these feelings we might not be excited about feeling, but it is so important for us to own whatever is happening on our emotional landscape. I love the quote from Abraham that that suggests to us to just own it and get over it. I mean, Abraham doesn't talk a lot about the importance of feeling your feelings, but they have mentioned it. Maybe Bashar says it better when he says, "You cannot change what you do not own." This is a good reminder to us that we're going to have a cleaner slate to work with when we let ourselves feel whatever we're feeling, rather than trying to talk ourselves out of it. I have learned this one many times, that just pretending that I don't feel that way or trying to feel differently, it can backfire. It's important to let whatever emotion is present, to let it roll when it's there, because that's how it doesn't get out of control. It's by resisting it that it can mess up our vibration. And a lot of conscious creators are nervous to let themselves be sad or angry because they're afraid of what that's going to attract, but it doesn't work to resist that stuff. So one of the tips we very rarely hear in conscious creation is to really let it roll with a hissy fit or with a good cry or whatever might be appropriate based on what you're feeling. And it isn't always appropriate to do it in the red hot moment that you're feeling it. Maybe sometimes you want to wait until you leave the office or whatever. Maybe not. But it's important to give yourself the freedom to feel what you feel. That's actually going to help you have a cleaner slate for achieving the vibrational alignment to what you're looking to create in life. So that's the first tip. The second one that we never hear is to take a break from our alignment practice or our manifesting tool or whatever process we're engaging to manifest what we want. A lot of times, and I'm one of them, that will advocate how important it is to be consistent and that you can't expect to get results if you aren't creating a new dominant vibration, and that takes time. You got to be persistent with it and regular about it. Yes, I think that's true, but sometimes it isn't helpful for us to keep doing something when we aren't feeling it. So sometimes giving ourselves a break from whatever we've been engaging, and only you really know when you need that break. If you are not having fun, if it's not a good time for you to do whatever it is that you're doing in your vibrational management practice, if you're not enjoying it, that's a good time for a break and to just set it down for a while. You're not going to lose the momentum that you created. You're not going to undo all of the work that you put in there, but it's kind of an art to know when it's time to set it down. In fact, Abraham's got some good tips for us on that when they talk about how when you're out of the vortex, this is no time to be repeating your affirmations. I used to use affirmations to try to get into the vortex, and Abraham says, no, you don't do this stuff in order to get there. You engage your alignment practices when you are feeling good. So I think that's a tip we don't hear very often about how powerful it can be to set it down for a while. And in fact, that kind of is an alignment practice if you think about it, to let yourself do what feels better when it's to walk away from it, whether it's for a day or a week, who knows. But sometimes we just get to feeling a little funky, and that isn't when you want to be writing in your pray rain journal. So recognize the power of giving yourself a break or taking a rest from your alignment practice when you feel inspired to. All right, third tip I wanted to share was, I love this one because we hear a lot of contrary stuff on this one. The tip is to let your ego lead. And I know ego gets a bad rap in many spiritual circles. It's often spoken about like it's a 4-letter word, like it's something that we need to learn to control because it's not serving us and nothing good comes from being run by your ego. But that's not actually the case. Here I am quoting Abraham again. I really like Abraham's take on it, where they said that there is such a thing as ego in the vortex and ego out of the vortex. Ego in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's where our desires come from in the first place. It's what individuates us from source energy. It's what makes us want what we want. And that's not a bad thing, you guys. That's what we came here for. We came here for the pleasure of living a human life. So lots of times when people are trying to get their ego under control, put it in check, and make sure that their desires aren't being run by their ego, you know what? Let your ego have some fun. Let it run wild. Let yourself want what you want, even if it doesn't seem, socially acceptable. There's no such thing as an unspiritual desire. Everything that exists is made from spirit. I learned that one from Ptah. And so when you think about it that way, I think it's a lot easier to accept whatever it is that your heart desires instead of judging what's a good desire and what's a bad desire. Let your ego have some fun. That's a tip you don't hear very often. You probably have some other intuitive knowings that you might not find reinforced by the law of attraction teachers that you're studying. I'd love to invite you to trust that inner knowing, because there isn't any guidance that'll serve you better than what you're getting internally. All right, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes. Thanks for listening and happy manifesting.